Okay, we already know that the Cowboys have done the unthinkable, trading franchise player Micah Parsons to the Packers, and what they are receiving is player Kenny Clark and 2 first-round draft picks. So the first-round draft pick will be rewarded to them in 2026, the second the following year in 2027. At first, this seems like a very catastrophic, misaligned, unequal trade. And while that very well may be true, it's important for us as fans to look at historically how first-round draft picks perform across the league for different franchises. These players out of the draft do get a lot of capital invested in them, and in a sense, these are investments on their future. It's like investing in the stock market. Something could look wonderful, and then all of a sudden it crashes, and there's sometimes no rhyme or reason to why. It is the same in the NFL. A player may not gel with the team. A player could get injured. There's a lot of different variables here. So the only thing that can really help us outside of anecdotal experience is looking at the data. How are these first-round draft picks performing historically for franchises across the league? And secondly, in order to really understand if the Cowboys are poised to take advantage of these 2 new first-round draft picks that they've been rewarded for this trade, we're going to take a look back at how the Cowboys historically operate on draft day. And we're going to look at the last 2 choices that they made in the first round. And we're going to take a look and see if, based on that data, what journey we can predict they might use these first 2 first-round draft picks with in 2026 and 2027. So this trade, you guys, there's a high potential for it to be a complete loss that haunts the Cowboys for years to come. But there also is a chance that the Cowboys can take advantage of this opportunity, if you can call it that they've been given. So let's take a look here. The historical ROI for trading first-round picks in the NFL is highly variable. While these picks do offer significant building upscale, like a long-term sort of investment, our data shows that more than half of these players do fail to become long-term starters in the league. So it's a gamble. It's a 50-50 gamble. You could really boil it down to that. But over the past 20 years, first-round picks have produced a strong caliber about 53% of the time. So we really are looking at about a 50% chance, a flip of a coin. But the chance of landing a perennial All-Pro or a long-term franchise tag for your team out of the draft is far, far lower. So what we're seeing here by the numbers is about 53% of first-round picks are considered successful. When I say considered successful, we're going to measure success by signing a second contract with that team that drafted you, or becoming a long-term multi-year starter for that same team. So to back it up, if you are to sign a first-round draft pick, there's a 53% chance that he will become a perennial success or even just consistent success for your team. It's also really interesting to note that these success stats do vary by position. So let's break this down a little bit even further. If you are to draft an offensive lineman as your first round pick in the NFL draft, there's an 83% chance that that player, that offensive lineman, will be a consistent contributor for your team, or even just consistent success for your team. It's also really interesting to note that these success stats do vary by position. So let's break this down a little bit even further. If you are to draft an offensive lineman as your first round pick in the NFL draft, there's an 83% chance that that player, that offensive lineman, will be a consistent contributor for your team. So that's the highest likelihood of position to draft that they will make an impact to your team right away. Linebackers fall a little bit shorter at 70%, tight ends at 67%, and quarterbacks are highly, highly volatile. They are 63% chance most likely to be starters from the first round. So, and even there, that statistic, that 63% of quarterbacks that are likely to start from the draft, that could end in a Johnny Manziel situation, a Caleb Williams situation. This doesn't guarantee long-term historic success as a franchise tag for your specific team. So about 47% of these quarterbacks that get drafted are considered busts. So back, once again, we're at that sort of flip of a coin, 50-50 odds for these types of positional skilled players. Let's look at examples of ROI and see where 3 times that this first round draft pick has really benefited a team and we've seen long-term success from that, when are 3 times that this first round draft pick was an absolute flop and a real damage to the wallet of the team and the success of the team that year. So first, success. Joe Burrow, obviously, he is still an impactful player in the NFL for the Cincinnati Bengals. He was their first round draft pick in 2020. This instantly elevated their franchise, and he became a top 5 quarterback within 3 years, which is relatively unheard of in the last 5 to 10 years. We saw a few quarterbacks like that emerge in the mid-2000s, like Russell Wilson, RG3. That was a really exciting time where quarterbacks came right out of college and made an impact in the NFL. But as we know, the switch from college to NFL is drastic, and a lot of players are not positioned for that, and rightfully so. It's a big, big difference. Now, guess who's number 2 on our biggest successes in the first round draft pick, you guys? Micah Parsons. Drafted in 2021 in the first round for the Cowboys. He's now a multiple All-Pro winner, and he is a franchise player in the NFL. Now for the Packers. And the third pick, you guys, who was drafted by the Vikings in 2020, Justin Jefferson. This guy came out of the gates and was incredibly impactful. He's changed the Vikings, the DNA of the franchise, honestly, is what I believe. He's changed the DNA of the game. He's incredible to watch. He constantly ups the bar, and he is, I believe, the best Vikings first round pick or overall pick that they've had in a decade. So those are 3 times that franchises went into draft day and they got tremendous success out of it. Keep those stories in mind while we're thinking about how the Cowboys might use their 2 first round draft picks in the coming years. But of course, on the other side of the coin, there are the times that the first round draft pick for a team is not as successful. And I don't like to say these names in order to put them down. I think we all know there's a lot of variables that can happen when you're in the NFL. Coaching gels, mismatches, overdrafting for the same position, injuries. There's a lot of elements here that can make these people become flops. So when I say that term, keep that in mind, and we're not trying to harsh on these players. First, worst case example of what a first round draft pick can do to sink your team. Jamarcus Russell. A lot of you guys will remember him. He was the Raiders' first round pick in 2007. He never became a starter, and he became actually a big financial burden on the team, and it was a disaster for the roster overall. The second pick who we're going to talk about is Kevin White on the Bears. He was drafted in 2015. He was just absolutely destroyed by injuries, and he made almost zero impact on that 2015 Bears team. Major loss, net loss all around for him, unfortunately, and that Bears organization that year. Thirdly, the most probably, in my eyes, infamous example of a draft flop is Johnny Manziel. He was drafted in 2014 to the Browns, and he had some major off-field issues that overshadowed his brief career, and certainly not taking those lightly. He had a lot of heavy battles that he was facing, but he did not conduct himself in a way that the Browns wanted to reward, and unfortunately that just sunk him very quickly, and it sunk the Browns for quite a few years as well. So let's think overall. We've seen stories where the first round draft pick can change the DNA of a team very quickly, and we've seen stories where a first round draft pick can absolutely destroy the wallet of a team, and it becomes like an extra limb that you can't get rid of, and nobody's happy, nobody wants them to be there, they don't want to be there. That's the absolute worst case scenario. So in order to take this information and apply it to what we can imagine the Dallas Cowboys might do with these picks they've been rewarded, let's look back at what the Cowboys have done with their last 2 first round draft picks. So historically, they have taken the last 2 years. 2024, Tyler Guyton. He was an offensive lineman. Tyler Booker was 2025, most recently. So these 2 Tylers were the last 2 first round draft picks that the Cowboys have taken. Let's take a look at how these have or might pan out, and let's use that decision-making pattern to inform what we can estimate that the Cowboys might do. Obviously, things can change with positional needs and different situations that will emerge that we can't even anticipate in a year or 2, but given the data, we can make some loose predictions. So Guyton's first rookie season was last year. He was immediately thrust into a very prominent role. Dak Prescott needed some support, and so they brought this guy in hoping he would do just that. There were some growing pains, as to be expected, but he is a very consistent athlete. He did have some struggles adjusting to the NFL edge rushers, but he had an average grade and he wasn't destroyed for his efforts. It was a fair first showing, a solid foundational pick. Then this year they just picked Tyler Booker. This guy, we haven't seen too much of him yet, but he is a solid foundational pick that may reach full potential. We shall see. Time will be the judge of that. So that's an interesting way to look at that. Just syndicating those two players together, their overall median draft grade by analysts was a B-, a B-. So that suggests that they are acceptable, not elite, not game changers. They may not be the ones who are going to change the DNA of the Cowboys, but there's always people like Brock Purdy who completely come into their own a couple years later and become absolute elite quarterbacks. Don't fight me on that. So knowing what we know now, in data-driven terms, holding on to a dominant franchise player, to me, consistently yields more results if you can manage the financial aspect of that. So if you can afford to hold on to a player like Micah Parsons, that value outweighs the potential gamble of 2 first-round draft picks. That's a little bit more reliable ROI. That's how you'd play it safe in the market if we're talking in capital gains terms. In the short term, though, if you want to take advantage of some savings and take a gamble on some fresh young players, and if that's what your team has an appetite for, then if the Cowboys are in that position, this is great for them in 2 years. So only really time will tell what's going to happen with this, but we do now have a little bit of historical data to inform what we can estimate may happen. And we can also use that information to figure out where the Cowboys are going to be looking to fill some gaps in their team with the college players this year. Now, since we're all fans here, I want to know about a time in your team's recent history when they drafted a first-round pick or any really draft pick at all that completely changed the DNA of your team, for the better or for the worse.